Big stories in the news. We should cover a couple of them. I know you probably cover them on All About Android this week. I certainly will on This Week in Google. On Friday, the jury came back in the Oracle versus Google case. The genesis of this case was crazy, and we've covered it on the show, but just to give you kind of a recap, when Google created Android, actually probably predated Google, when Andy Rubin created Android, they decided to use Java. They went and they talked to Sun, the creators of Java, and decided not to license Android, but instead to not copy it, but to, in a clean room environment, recreate it. And in the past, this has been kind of the legal thing to do. The folks at Sun, I remember talking to James Gosling, the guy who wrote Java, created Java. He said, we felt like we'd been slimed, that Google probably did look at the source code because it was open source and maybe copied a few things. There were 9 specific lines of code in array checker in Java that said, oh, this looks exactly the same. Steve said, we felt kind of slimed. Jonathan Schwartz, the CEO at the time of Sun, felt kind of slimed, but they weren't going to sue about it. It was just like, oh, guys, come on, license the thing. But they didn't. Meanwhile, along comes Oracle. They buy Sun for a lot of money. And Oracle, apparently, according to Gosling, their lawyers' eyes lit up when they heard about this Java thing, and Oracle saw that as a potential way to maybe make some of that money back that they paid for it. Oracle did, in fact, go after Google, saying, hey, Google, you stole our code. But the lawyers, and Gosling told me this as well, realized that they weren't going to be able to win a case where they had to get a jury to look at the code and say they stole the code. They tried the case. The judge, in fact, Judge Alsup, said, I learned Java just to do this, and in fact, this is fine. It's legit. Google wins. Oracle appealed, and due to a weird loophole in the courts, because there was some patent stuff involved, it went to the federal court in D.C. instead of the Ninth Circuit here on the West Coast. The federal court has a different kind of relationship to patents and intellectual property. And Oracle didn't pursue this over, oh, they stole it. They said, we want to copyright the API. We want to make it so they can't clean room reverse engineer it. The federal court said, you're right. It is copyrighted. Google appeals to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, no, wait a minute. You guys, you got to stop. First, get this copyright thing out of the way. So it went back to Judge Alsup, and that's the trial that just ended. 10 jury of their peers, 10 angry men or whatever, got to hear this whole testimony, not about whether Google stole the code, not about whether the code was copyrightable. Both of those things were agreed upon. Was whether the API was copyrightable, is whether that Google's use of the API constituted fair use of a copyrighted product. And there's 4 tests for fair use, and we do fair use. When we show something on the news, it's fair use.
It's our main defense, I think. I just went through a legal thing as well, where I pleaded fair use and was able to get around it.
Yeah,
because it's fair use.
If you get a takedown on YouTube, if you can justify it, saying, look, it's fair use, you're probably going to win, especially if you're a news organization.
And partially because the argument to prove it's not fair use is way more expensive and long, and and it becomes a resources issue. But
well,
Google and Oracle have resources.
They have resources. They had indicated at the beginning of the trial that they were going to look for massive damages, like $9 billion in damages. Anyway, the good news, it's over. The judge and jury say they don't contest whether the API is copyrightable. They don't talk about whether Google stole the code. But whatever they did was fair use, and so they're off the hook. Now, of course, Oracle says we'll appeal.
Of course.
It will probably go back to that federal court. They could, who knows what's going to happen. But anyway.
But it's a victory for fair use.
A victory for fair use.
And it's kind of hard because Oracle's whole kind of argument is that, well, we could have done Android and Google stole the success that we could have had, but they didn't.
Well, in fact, they did. They made a Java phone, and it was a flop.
Exactly.
It was a flop. But that was their real contention was, look, see, because of Android, we weren't able to properly monetize. And that's, by the way, one of the 4 tests in fair use is if it costs you money, right? And in this case, the jury said, no, you guys didn't have a shot. So, good news. Not over. These things never end. But Google keeps winning, so I have a feeling that this will go well.